We've covered a great deal about what play is and how a person experiences it and what kind of design decisions are shaped for this game, for about those things. What we haven't talked about is the experience of the author as an author and designer. And one of those, I have some overarching principles, and then I have talk about alphas and betas that I thought you would be interested in. Yeah. So the overarching principles are the ones that I just put into the chat box. And you've probably heard me talk about this before, the first one, which is the curse of good design is publication. That once you start fantasizing about publication, and worse, planning it, you are in such danger of borking your design. You're going to start making decisions and focusing your attention on variables that are great to do relative to publication, but your game is almost certainly not ready for it right about the time when you start getting excited about it.
Yeah.
And this is by far, and I would say overwhelmingly, the flaw of role-playing game design is to get, enthused about, getting your release date planned, thinking about the Kickstarter, thinking about print costs, thinking about layout. Now, don't get me wrong. We talked about inspirational color already.
Yeah.
And for many people, a typeface actually plays a good role for that. And the look of a page can be part of that inspiration.
Right.
But how many times have you read a role-playing game and come across a swath of prose which clearly the author was in love with long ago,
right,
put on a page, got it typeset and laid out, and now it's sticking out like a sore thumb. It's a mess. Mm-hmm. It's not working in the game. It confuses you every time.
Right.
And a lot of the time it might be an introduction. A lot of the time it might be some aspect of describing combat. Unsurprisingly, most people spend a lot of time working on the combat and working on their introduction. Yeah. And those two pieces have a tendency to have this legacy problem.
I've often also noticed that they'll that sort of prose will promise play experiences that never happen in the game.
Absolutely, right. And that's very true. And I think that there is a dedicated effort one must make to say, I'm not publishing yet. I can fantasize. I can put up a cool logo if that's where my talents lie or where my friend's talent lies. I can, but at this point, when the person starts actually putting it together and using rules that aren't ready, using what they hope the rules will do without any knowledge that they would do it, or if they do, whether that's really what they want, and they're putting it into layout, and they are. And it's really easy. In many ways, it's almost a dodge. It's difficult, but very practical and pragmatic and somewhat of a comfort zone to jump into book design and writing chattily to the reader, or in that stilted wooden clinical way to the reader, whichever, but writing in the way you think a role-playing game should sound. It's a comfort zone to jump into the pragmatics of book production and that kind of writing.
Yeah.
Rather than to go back and say, you know what, I've got to play this game again and just make more notes on it and play it again and just make more notes on it, play it again, and just keep freaking going. And there's things, and sooner or later, I'm probably going to shoot one or two of my sacred cows Sooner or later, I'm going to remember why I wanted to do this in the first place. If I can keep my fingers on it and not shoot a sacred cow, because it is sacred for this game. And taking it through thick and thin for that purpose. During that time, particularly with all this play, the second point that I have there is crucial, which is your playtesters are, we love them all, idiots. And they may not be, but you need to think they are. And that sounds terrible. It sounds so arrogant. It sounds mean. But the fact is that they don't know what your guiding vision is. They can't feel it. And they, in many cases, are going to want to give you advice.
Yeah.
But the thing to do is to be honest and authentic about what they actually did with it, how they experienced it. In many cases, the thing that they loved is exactly what you don't want.
Yeah.
In many cases, the thing that they hate, you're like, I need to teach that better. And every single one of them will say, throw that shit out. And you're like, I'm not throwing that shit out. I just need to teach it better. That's my job.
Gotcha.
And so understanding how they experience it is really, really important. Understanding what fiction was produced is really, really important. Understanding what they did with the numbers and mechanics is really, really important. But it's not your classic play test. What did you like? What didn't you like? What do you think needs changing? What did you want to see more of? Blah, blah, blah. All that, blind and deafen yourself to it. And it is I've never heard anyone else give this advice. And to me, it is crucial. The worst thing you can do is go to one of these indie game conventions, sit down with all these people who've run their Kickstarters and won their awards and whatever, and have them suddenly take over your game.
Yeah.
And it's not only is it's psychologically very demoralizing, even when they're smiling and being so nice and so helpful.
Right.
And I have, years ago, found myself very unhappy with the way I dealt with a number of people with their games in design. And I didn't know why, and I said, I am not doing this right. I am not helping these people. Something is wrong. And for a while, and you can see this at the Forge, I backed out of the forum called Indie Game Design. I backed away from it. I said, I'm working with people. With this one, we reconfigured the forums so that it included the forum called First Thoughts. And I said, I'm going to deal with people at the first thoughts level. I want to deal with inspiration. I want to deal with the fun of loving the thought of your game, at the outset.
Right.
I'm going to talk to people there. When we want to talk about the play testing, we'll go over to actual play, and we're going to strictly talk about what happened in there. And I trained myself, don't take over, just talk about what happened in the playtesting and see what the author thinks of it. Help them see what they think of it. And that's what I'm going to do. After a while, I started, sometime around 2009 is when I started refining and formalizing how I wanted to do this. Only then did I start doing consulting a few years later. And my big mantra is don't freaking take it over.
Right.
And so, for whatever reason, people are sometimes anxious or people are very proud. All of these are okay. What's not okay is for another person to come in, because every one of these attitudes that a person might have about their game in development is vulnerable. And it's not okay for somebody to come in and actually inadvertently harm the person through those windows of vulnerability in the project. I've seen some really good games get abandoned that way. And I've seen some really shitty games go to publication because the person gave it up, and what we have is person A's idea and person B's implementation and interpretation, and you can just see them run right into each other. So that's not to say that people can't collaborate as creators and stuff like that. I am saying, however, that the role of a person playtesting the game is to play. And that's why I am very big on don't try to break the game. You are not stress testing when you playtest. And that goes against everything in the hobby. Everyone in gaming knows that playtesting is stress testing.
Right.
You're supposed to, break it. You're supposed to find out where it doesn't work. You're supposed to find out where the numbers are off. You're supposed to do all those things. Right. And I say in playtesting a role-playing game, that's not what you need as a designer, particularly in the early stages. You will see when it doesn't work.
Right.
And you can keep that to yourself and take action about it as you see fit, whether it's going to be a matter of presentation or whether it's going to be a matter of design change, whether it's going to be a matter of instrumentation. And you'd say this would work fine as long as we had one of those things, like a little paper gear inside an envelope where you spin it with your thumb. If we have one of those, this is going to work fine. It didn't work fine. That whole playtest fell apart. Everybody hated the system. Now I know they need those. We're good. So those are the kind of two principles: avoiding getting seduced by the publication process and avoiding turning your playtesting into stress testing and committee work.
Yeah.
There are some few people with whom you, me, whoever, there are some few people that one of us will click with and be comfortable to talk with at that level. Typically a person who, for whatever reason, doesn't intrude while still being assertive and strong, and have strong views.
Right.
When you find a person like that, go to town. Trust that you're great. It's great to have someone like that around. But they are vastly outnumbered by the number of people who are suddenly going to start talking about our game.
Yeah.
When you start to play test with them. Sooner or later, they're going to be saying, well, in our game, it's going to be like this. We should do that. And you're like, wait a minute. So, okay, so does that make any sense? First of all, as sort of some important principles.
Yeah.